Okay, lesson 7, animated GIFs. In this lesson, we're going to make a primitive animation in Photoshop, learning some of the basic concepts for animation, while also practicing some of our tools that we've been looking at in this program. Adobe Photoshop isn't very optimized for making animated GIFs. You can do it. Programs like Adobe Animate obviously would be a lot better for making animations, or other programs like Toon Boom. But we can get the core concepts in Photoshop while practicing. It'll also show us how to export out videos from Photoshop using some legacy features left over from older versions of the program. So we are going to make this guy reading a book. He's going to look up and then nope out of the screen in kind of a nice primitive little GIF. I like Photoshop for this kind of thing because it's fast and easy to do, these kind of quick primitive ones in the program, rather than having to open up something bigger and more difficult to use like Adobe Animate, which I'd have to spend a while putzing around with. Okay, let's go ahead and look at how we can get started. Okay, to get started, we need to open up our image. So we'll go up to File Open, Command O, click the Open button, doesn't really matter. And we're going to grab our Book Surprise. And we're going to get into Essentials workspace if you're not already there. And I'm going to reset Essentials just so our workspaces look the same, and maybe zoom in a little bit. Okay, so for our animation, he needs to move separate from the background. So we're going to remove the background. His eyeballs need to move separate from him. So we're going to move his eyeballs to their own layer and then cut his eyes out. And then we're going to add 3 text layers. When working with animation in Photoshop, it's good to plan stuff out because it's hard to change and modify things later. Again, better programs like Toon Boom and Adobe Animate, you can do a lot more than what you can do here in Photoshop. So let's unlock our background layer and let's click Select Subject. We can see our Select Subject doesn't quite grab all of his sleeve down here. So let's grab the Quick Select tool and let's paint over. Oops, I'm in add mode. Add, and I want to paint over that sleeve to add it in place. Then I'm going to invert my selection by clicking the Invert Selection button in my contextual taskbar, or going up to Select Invert. And I'm just going to hit Delete because I don't want this background. And then I'll drop my selection, Command D. Next, we want to grab just his eyes. So I'm going to zoom in on the eyes a little bit more. And I'm going to grab the Quick Select tool. With the Quick Select tool active, let's go ahead and set the size to be up here at the top, 1515. No, 15. We don't need the other 15. We'll do 15. And I'm going to paint over this eyeball. And I'm going to paint over this one. Oop, got too much. Command Z. And maybe I don't want that little section down there. That looks good. And I'm going to do Edit, Cut. And I want to put them back in exactly the same spot. So I'm going to go to Edit, Paste. Oops, I want to do Edit, Paste, Special. And that puts it back in exactly the same spot. And I'm going to drag the monk layer to be above it. In fact, let's go ahead and label this. So this is monk, and this is eyeballs. And right now, if the eyeballs move around, I'm going to turn off those transform controls. We can see that we end up with that space around it, but it does look like in a Scooby-Doo movie where you can see stuff, or makes it look like he's looking around. We just need to expand out this pink a little bit. So I'm going to hide the monk layer. I'm going to hold down I, or click on the eyedropper tool to sample a color, and I'm going to grab some of this pink. I'm going to hit B for brush tool. And up here at the top, make sure everything is at 100. If you're working with fancy stuff last chapter, it might still be putzed up a little bit. And right click, and let's just grab hard round. But let's actually set the hardness down to be, 15%. So let's do that 1515 here. And then I'm just going to expand out the eyeball a little bit. Basically just a once around. And I'm not doing more than this because if I do too much, we're pretty close to the side of his face. So let's see if we come out there yet. Nope. We're pretty close to the side of his face. If I do too much, we end up with pink over there. So don't make it too big. And let's Command 0 and fit that back on my screen. Next, let's add in our text. So I'm going to grab the T for text tool, and I'm going to reset my colors to be white and black so I get nice black text. And let's add in a nope up here. And I'll type in nope. Let's change the size and formatting of this. So where it says Arial is fine. I want Arial black. So let's do Arial. And I want Arial black. And the size, that's way too small. Let's do, I don't know, 150. How does that look? 150. And let's move you to be about here. And let's move you to the top of the layer stack. And I'm going to change you to Nope 1. Let's get some more nopes. I'm going to hold down the Alt Option key and click and drag to about here and click and drag to about here. And let's label this Nope 2 and 3. And now we have everything we need for our animation. Let's first hide our nopes because this will be our first default state. And let's switch to the animate version of Photoshop. So up in the top right, click motion. Right here it says create video timeline. We're actually going to click the drop down next to it and pick create frame animation and then click so we get the animation version of it instead of video version of it. You can actually edit video in Photoshop. It's kind of awful. So don't do it. It's possible, but it's kind of awful. It's not something they've changed in forever. Okay, so when we're animating, we've got two types of frames in real animation. Photoshop, they all look the same, but we've got an idea of frames. So each animation is made up usually of 30 frames per second, and slight movements between those frames create the illusion of movement. And so when you're animating, you don't want to have to necessarily animate all of those at the same time. So we have keyframes and then something called tweens, which is the process of adding in frames in between 2 points of key motion. So let's hide the monk for a minute. Let's talk about it. So like if I am animating, so like I have like let's say I've got a ball, boop, 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 ball. And I want this ball to travel this direction across the screen. What I would do is I would make another frame and I would move the ball across the side of the frame. And now I have 2 frames. I have keyframe 1, keyframe 2, start of the movement, end of the movement. And then I can use tweening to automatically add in additional frames, smoothing out that motion. So like there's 5. And if I added in additional keyframes in there, so let's say I did 10, the motion would appear smoother. Now in Photoshop, I don't have a lot of control of what I can do in terms of that movement. So in Photoshop, I can do movement, I can do opacity, and then I can also do anything from the FX menu. I can't do things like make it bigger or rotate it. I'd have to make individual layers for each one of those frames, and it gets a little arduous. In programs like Adobe Animate or Toon Boom and stuff, you have an astonishing amount of control over tweening. Like you can ramp up speeds, you can draw paths for it to follow, you can do all sorts of fancy stuff with it. Photoshop is going to be pretty limited. All right, so when we start, we want all of these guys like so. Okay, so we want these ones off, and we don't actually need that layer. So yours should look something like this. So we have our initial frame, and we're going to put in our keyframes for our main movement. So I've got keyframe 1. Let's make a new frame. And in this frame, what I want to do is I want to move his eyes up, so like he's looking. And I made a new keyframe, by the way, clicking the little box down here. So we're going to move using the arrow key. We're going to move his eyeballs up just a little bit. So I'm going to hit up twice on mine. So it kind of looks like he's looking up off into the distance. And then I'm going to make another keyframe. And I'm going to hit left 5 times. So he's looking off to the side. And then I'm going to add another keyframe, and I want him to slide off the screen with his eyeballs. So I'm going to click on the eyeball layer still, and then shift click onto the monk layer so they're both active. And I might need to bring my screen over a little bit. And then I'm going to drag him down to where I want him to end. And so like I'm dragging the directions like right, so I can see the movement, what it's going to look like. And I want him to end right about there. And now if I play this, we have kind of a primitive version of this. It's kind of awful. Oops, please stop. Let's fit this back on the screen. Command 0, Command minus. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to smooth out this animation. And now what's frustrating is that there isn't a way to label these. So it's easy for me to tell which one's which, but whatever. So we're going to make frame 1 active, and we're going to click the tween button, and the default will be fine. And I'll click OK. Now we're going to tween between what was keyframes 3 and 4. But to do that, we're going to make frame 8 active, and then I'm going to click the tween button again, and I'll click OK. And now I have that movement tweened, and when I play it, we can see that he looks up and slides off the screen. So what I want to do is I want him to pause with his eyeballs moving. And so to make it pause, I can actually just set a duration for it, which basically adds in a bunch of additional frames without having to have a bunch of additional frames down here. So I'm going to make frame 8 active, and I'm going to click where it says 0 seconds, and I'm going to pick 1. I'm going to click where it says frame 9, and I'm going to do 1. And now when I play it, we get this nice little dramatic movement, kind of accentuating our design. Finally, I want to make my text layers appear. So I'm going to make frame 9 active, and I'm going to turn on text 1. I'm going to make frame 10 active and turn on text 2. I'm going to make 11 active and 3, and then I'm going to rinse and repeat. So 12, 1, 13, 2, and then 14, 3. There are unify buttons, by the way. So like I've got this unify thing. So like if I want to unify the position opacity or FX between all of my frames, I can click the unify button, which for us we don't need to do. But if you are making your own animation later, these unify position opacity and FX can be very handy. So now when we play this, we get our animation. So let's see how we can get this out of Photoshop. So you'd want to save your PSD for your master copy so you can have it. So all the stuff would be continuing to be edited. But then to export this out, goofily, we just can't go to File, Save a Copy, and pick GIF out of here. Like you would think that would work. But instead, it just makes a static GIF. It doesn't make a proper GIF when you save it that way. So what we have to do instead is go to File. We're going to go to Export. And we're going to pick Save for Web Legacy. From Save from Web Legacy, we want to make our file size a little bit smaller because most places when you're uploading GIFs, they have to be small. And so to do that, we're going to pick some of these settings out of here. So instead of 128, we're going to do 32 dithered. And what this is going to do is it's going to limit the number of colors available. So like we can see this little swatch set down here. So that's all of the colors that are in the GIF. And that just makes it basically, what does 64 dithered look like? 64 looks a little bit better. Let's do 64. And we want to pick that because it just reduces the amount of spaces it's going to take up. Same thing for our size. Let's go ahead and make this smaller. 1500 is pretty big, so let's do 500. And when we click off to the side, we can see that it is giving us a estimate for the file size. Let's see, what was 32? Is that 32 dithered? Yeah, that's a lot smaller. Let's do 32. And let's go ahead and leave the rest of these settings alone, although looping can be handy, or not looping. And we'll click Save. I'll throw this on my desktop. And now I can find my GIF. So here is the GIF that we just made. Boop, and he slides off. Now, if you want to avoid that kind of awful whiteness, we could then re-add a white layer. So let's go ahead and add a layer, drag it to the bottom. Command-All, Shift-Delete, and white. And now when we export it, export, we'll avoid that white edge problem. There we go, that looks better. So go ahead and make your GIF, and hopefully this is a fun little lesson.